The federal government of Nigeria has recognized the severity of the country's food crisis and has implemented various initiatives to address this pressing issue. These initiatives are aimed at ensuring food security, supporting farmers, promoting sustainable agriculture, and improving infrastructure in order to mitigate the impact of the crisis. Some of the initiatives include the Anchor Borrowers Program and Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, PFI, amongst others. The federal government has also emphasized the need to address climate change as a significant factor contributing to food crisis in the country. You're welcome to Insight Today. I am Jumai Manson. Today on the program, I am being joined by Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande. She is the founder and president of the She Farmers Initiative. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. You're welcome back, and this is Insight Today on Global Television. And like I said on the program, I am being joined by Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande. She is the founder and president of the She Farmers Initiatives. And talking about the looming crisis of the high cost of living and food protests ongoing in the country, finding it difficult for individuals in our society to actually level up when it comes to balancing the food crisis and the high cost of living in the country. And that is why she, as a farmer, will throw more light on the prospects and the promises of the federal government and, of course, farmers in ways in which they go about their daily struggle to ensure the food crisis doesn't loom as much as it does. And on the program today, we'll be looking at all the initiatives from the federal government, from the court order that has to do with the federal government, the 7 days ultimatum, how far it has gone. And of course, it has elapsed to see whether the high cost of living has come to a low when it has to do with the reduction of grains, it has to do with rice, maize, and all of those spare parts that are combined in the high cost of living in our society. I will be asking questions. I hope Mrs. Kudura will be able to throw more light in what specific actions has the federal government taken to address the food crisis in the country, which is an issue for every individual in the society, talking about the high cost individuals, talking about no farm products in order to buy in the market space and all of that. Well, we pray that there is a drastic solution to this issue at hand. And let me just ensure that our guest has joined on the program. Mrs. Kudirat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Kudirat. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. Nice to connect with you.
All right. Like I said, Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande, she is the founder, president of She Farmers Initiatives. Now, looking at the ongoing issue that is happening in the country, talking about the food crisis, the economy as a whole, from protests, from Mina to Niger, and of course the ongoing looking at what the court said concerning the federal government giving them the 7 days ultimatum to bring down the high cost of commodities in the market. Now, what specific actions has the federal government of Nigeria taken to address the food crisis in the country, in your own opinion?
Well, I think the federal government over the years, over decades, have been very sentimental about food sustainability and production in the country. In the previous regime of President Buhari, we all witnessed the enormous amount of money spent, in agri interventions on different strategic crops across the country. So from the north central to south to southwest, we saw the inflow of funds to as in form of intervention. However, that intervention has not really yielded any much of result, because most of those interventions are not, we can't say they are sustainable. If they've been sustainable, we wouldn't be seeing the result we're seeing today. So I think the federal government needs to be more strategic about their intervention. I would suggest that we should just stop pointing fingers at the federal government every time we talk about agricultural intervention. We need to look at this intervention at the state level. The state governors are the custodian of the wealth of the state. They own the region, they have information on the region, and they get necessary support from the central to make their state yield and productive. We know that the state governors get monthly allocations from the central. They get also internally revenue. And more importantly, recently, the state governor is the #1 person in his own state. He is responsible for our food. That is the reason why Niger state governor had to stand and say no movement of trucks out of my state, because he's concerned. If the people are hungry, they will come and knock on his door. So that's why he had to take that drastic measure and says no movement of commodities from Niger State. So I think our governors need to be very proactive now. They need to look inward. And Nigeria, each state in this country is blessed. We have the land mass, we have the commodities, we have the fertile ground. So our governors need to do more. They need to embrace and bring together relevant stakeholders in the state, that will transform the food production of their states. So it's beyond the federal government. This federal government is doing a lot. It's sending this, sending that here and there, but it's not sustainable, it's not measurable. So the state governors need to be intentional at this moment in time. The federal government has been pushing a lot to sustain, to explain the renewed hope agenda of the federal government. The state governors are the drivers to make this successful.
Exactly.
So it's not about the federal. Now let's go back to the state governors. The money allocation, what do they use this money for? The state governors, they have access to the lands in the state. They have information. They have security information. If you notice, some states now, farmers can't even go to the farm anymore because of insecurity. Before now, several years before now, decade before now, we have a lot of our fields running and producing cotton that were feeding textiles mills in Kaduna, textiles mills across the country. What happened to those fields? We don't need bushes anymore in Nigeria. We need the government to bring in tractors to the state and clear all these bushes. If you clear a bush, nobody will hide in the bush. If they clear the bush, provide tractors, provide inputs, do something sustainable for the farmers. Our men, our women, the farmers are always there, in and out of the season. But you see, it's not even about giving them a loan. It's not loan. That's why the loan they've been giving them over the years is not producing the result that is expected. What they need some strategic support. Who is the farmer that will afford to go and buy a tractor of 30-something million naira? If you have a land and you want to clear a farmland, the cost of clearing the land, the first cost of cultivation, 60% already goes into clearing. So most times you find out that women and farmers are constrained with all that they are able to clear. So you see, in Nigeria, most of our lands are underutilized.
Okay.
You travel some places, you drive for hours, and you see land lying fallow, nothing on it. And what you say, what's happening? They say there's no water. They are waiting for rain. How can you be waiting for rain? There's water underground. There's irrigation system. So for me, it's not even about the federal government. Let's even leave the central. The central has been doing it for decades and it's not yielding results. Let's go back to the states.
Okay. Now, so you mentioned, you said something about being strategic. Now, how, in your own words, the federal government, how are they working towards ensuring food security in Nigeria, especially in areas most affected by the crisis? There's so many crises in the northeast when it comes to areas where we get farm produce, in the south, in the southwest. How do you think the federal government is ensuring security in Nigeria, especially areas most affected by crisis?
You see, like I said, this insecurity has been happening for years. Not yesterday, not even during Buhari, even during Jonathan, there were insecurity.
Of course,
so
yes.
This insecurity problem is actually advancing, over the years. And the only way we can solve it, I will say it again here, is for us to engage our land. Even if you buy ordinary land, a plot of land in a remote place, and you leave it for 2-3 years, if you go there, you'll be surprised to see somebody building on your land because they have not taken possession. So for me, the only language to keep, if you look at a lot of buses that they are hijacking people, taking people on the highway, where are they taking them into? They're taking them into bushes. But if we can reduce these bushes and let our governors engage our land, I can say that the federal government can have an arrangement to make available necessary tractors, machineries that will make this land useful for our people to engage, so that there won't be an hideout for bandits or for people to go in. And by the time we have our lands open up, even the youth who are unengaged, they can come in. Nigeria is blessed. We have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of Nigeria is the only country that the agro-commodities are sought after in the global market. We have the best ginger. We have the best cashew. We have the best of everything in this country. So the government needs to be intentional to mechanize the production of our food in order to make it sustainable and also enhance employment across the country.
All right. Looking at you talking about employment. Now, you heard about the 7 days ultimatum that was given by the courts to the federal government to cut down costs when it comes to the, produce and things that are our consumables in the society. Now, are there any, being a farmer, and I'm sure that has to do with agriculture and all of that, are there any specific programs or initiatives that the federal government has implemented to support farmers and promote agricultural productivity in Nigeria to ensure that there is low cost of living among Nigerians that you are aware of?
I will give you an instance, ma. If you look at the production of cassava, production of gari in Nigeria, cassava itself as a commodity has become the value addition in cassava has increased so much. So cassava is being used for so many products. There are a lot of product line on cassava. I tell you today, cassava bowl in Oyo, I think middle of last year was 2,500 naira. As I speak to you today, it's gone to as high as 17,000 naira, and this is just about 22.5 kg of gari. So you ask me what has happened? Why is this sudden surge or increase? The reason is because there's a high demand for cassava. There are a lot of import substitution that is happening. Our people would rather use local input than importing. So the production of cassava flour, the production of ethanol, the production of sorbitol, is taking shape locally, which is a good news. However, the input required for the production of those commodity, those produce, is enormous. So we need to up our game by increasing production. So the issue of 7 days ultimatum given by the court that federal government to reduce prices of food is not magic. It is not something that is not something that the government can implement immediately. It's market driven. Buying food in the market is market driven. Do you understand? So the only thing we need to do, the government needs to do right now, is actually to move in and increase production. Before, you know,
Oh wow, Mrs. Kuburat, are you
more
there with
harmful
us? We
than.
have a
Yes.
slight issue with the network. Okay, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm here with you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Can you
Please
hear
go
me?
ahead.
Okay, so what I'm saying right now is that one of the strategic that the government needs to look at is actually to commercialize agri production. Why will I say that? Because you can't afford to see the women suffer so much in producing on just 1 acre of land when they have thousands they can produce on. So we need to increase cultivation by using all the lands that we have. And the only way we can do that is by having tractors that can clear it. Once we have machine and tractors that can clear it, and then I also want to say to you, Matt, that the government needs to carry out this assignment at the state level. The state governors need to engage all relevant stakeholders. The agri extension service, they need to come back. They need to come back and active. This agri extension service will provide support for farmers. Now, most farmers do not have that support of extension service. There are new things that is happening, innovative, they need intervention. We can't continue to plant the same crop the same way in this modern time and expect increase in yield. So they need this. The state government need to engage all relevant stakeholders. We have in Nigeria, we have a lot of agri agencies in Nigeria. We should engage them. They are not just there to sit down. We need to engage them. Then the government also needs to invest so much in research. We have research institute. We have agri research institute for different commodities, for ginger, for cashew, for palm fruit, NIFO, we have IITA. We have all institutes. The government should fund them, the research institute, to make availability of improved seedlings for farmers across.
Okay, understanding all of that, you mentioned research and you mentioned being engaged. Now, I know as a farmer, you have one or two challenges when it comes to issues. Now, in what way has the federal government, have they done to address factors contributing to the food crisis, looking at climate change, conflict, inadequate infrastructure? At what ways have they come to at least help or extend their hand of fellowship, because we know with the rising cost of food in our nation, Nigeria, you need the farmers as well. As it's not all about opening up the reserves, but these farmers who are the ones that toil day and night to ensure there is enough food. So how has the federal government contributed when it comes to all of these challenges you face when it comes to climate change? We know how it is where there's not enough rain, and the conflict of insecurity. We talk about the terrorist, banditry, kidnapping, and inadequate infrastructure or tools, not having the right tools, or tools that are not functioning anymore. How has that been as a farmer and being in the agricultural sector?
Well, what I will say regarding that is that the federal government is trying, and I said to you that the government of Buhari, me personally, I have had it in the news every day, most times. Oh, the federal government has released also billions of naira to Jigawa farmers. The federal government has released also amount of money to support Nasarawa farmers. The federal government has released so much money to Borno farmers who lost displaced poultry farmers. I hear that on a regular basis. But those interventions have not yielded result because they were not sustainable and they were not measurable. So what I would say right now is that the federal government has been releasing funds right from decades. So the needful is no longer business as usual, because we are in a country whose population is on the increase, especially at a time like this when the government had to remove subsidy. The price of fuel has gone up, and you know, when
Yes, it
fuel goes up,
has.
it affects all other sectors. It affects transportation of commodity from the farm outside. It affects diesel. It affects a lot. So for me, I think the major intervention that the federal government needs to do, they've been doing it, but the way they're doing it is not yielding results. So right now we have to go back to a round table and begin to engage the custodian of the wealth of the state. If you look at it, when this Ashiwaju government of renewed hope came in, immediately they released 2 billion naira to state governors to cushion the effect of, avoid this situation we are in right now. But that intervention, we don't even know how that intervention was executed. If it
True.
was executed, is it sustainable? I can't say. Then the issue of giving people money, 25,000 naira, what do they call it? Giving poor people, poor people 25,000 naira, looking for people's name and account to give them 25,000 across the country. Those interventions, they are not sustainable. If you look at 25,000 naira given to 5 million people, that is billions of naira. If you go to Lagos, where they are doing this Lagos state, the Makoko people that are living in abject poverty, go there and give them a trawler. Madam, do you know what a trawler is? A trawler that will help them catch fish. Nigerians, we are the only country in Africa that has over 830 kilometers of waterways.
That's
What
true.
are we using the waters for? Must we leave the water for quarry to be taken? Do you know all these in the water part? Must our people free on canoe to be looking for? So I say to you, man, state in Nigeria is endowed. So our governors be looking inward. So the federal government is releasing funds, they are releasing support. And in terms of infrastructure, man, there's been a lot of in the past president or Buhari government, there were a lot of massive infrastructure, road construction. I, as a farmer, I can tell you categorically that in Ibadan here, I can tell you of improved infrastructure to farming settlement. Before now, traveling from RITA to our farm in Iseyin, it used to take like 1 hour 40 minutes, 1 hour 40 minutes thereabout. Now it's less than 40 minutes to travel from Ibadan to the farm settlement in Ado-Awaye. Yes, that's significant improvement. That's what we're talking about. The state governor of Oyo State has taken that as passion to open up these places because he knows the importance of this region. So I will say again, let us leave federal government. Federal government has been doing it for decades. It's not yielding results. Let's go back to the state governors, who are the custodian of all the resources in the state. Let's go back to them. Let them call a stakeholders meeting. Each state is peculiar. Each state has different commodities. Kaduna has ginger.
But you know,
They have the best ginger in the world.
Kuburat, we cannot actually do anything if we do not include the federal government in all of this. They have the upper hand, don't you think?
No, what I'm saying is that you can't do anything outside of the government. That's
Very
the
true,
honest truth.
yes.
Even as a private sector, you cannot. That's why I'm saying that the federal government have been doing what they should do. The federal government will not come and give Tokpe and the money. They will give it through the state governor. They give governors allocation. I told you they gave palliative, 2 billion palliative.
Okay.
What is the money for? The federal government, after they remove subsidy, federal government allocation to state has increased. I think in August, they shared 1.7 trillion naira to state governors. What happened to the money? Let's be true to ourselves. Let our governors see that this is not government of Ijoba Alagbadamo. It's not the governor of I'm wearing Atiku, I'm wearing Agbada, I'm turning right. No, it's the government of rolling the sleeve now. With the danger that is imminent, we need to roll the sleeve and walk the talk so that people will not begin to knock on the door and say we are hungry. So I think the federal government has done its bit and they are still doing it. And I know that this present government, they are not comfortable with the situation at hand. It's something they inherited, so they are working day and night to take this problems away. But the government of each state, governors do not work in isolation. They work with the center and they work with local government. In Nigeria, we have 774 local governments. There's no need for you to say you want to start counting the poor people in Isenyi, the poor people in Ekiti South, the poor people in Ishie, in different local government. The people in the local government, they have details of the people in their community. So whatever intervention the government needs to do that will be sustainable must carry the people along. It must be community based. So we have to go back to from the start. Let's go back to where we all came from. Let the governor of the state come out. The governor knows the number of people in his state. He knows where the security challenges are. He knows the commodities that they have. He knows where they can harness it. You know how to improve it. Not the federal government. The federal government is just a father sitting at the center, reallocating resources across. So our governors should sit up and get all stakeholders in the state, get their sleeves rolling, get all the commodities association. We have different women associations in agric interventions. We have advocacy groups, we have different advocacy group in the state. They know them. They should bring all of them on board. The governor should not work in isolation anymore. If they want significant progress and something sustainable, they need to bring stakeholders that they know they are through, that will add value to the food production of the state.
Now, let's talk about adding value to the food production. Let us look at collaboration when it comes to relevant stakeholders, both domestically and internationally. How are they able to tackle food crisis in Nigeria? In what way have they come in to show concern when it comes to, as a farmer, and of course in the agricultural forum? How do you think these shareholders have come in when it comes to domestically and internationally to tackle the food crisis that is ongoing in Nigeria?
Well, the honest truth is we cannot continue to wait on international community to put food on our table. I know that quite a lot of international agencies, as individual myself, as organizations, as we are affiliated with different agencies across the country, World Food Organization, they do a lot of trainings, we also even see all these things on YouTube, improve seedlings and all those things. So there's and there are funding. Look at recently AFDB just released how many millions of dollars for I think a regional support for agro-processing zones. And I'm happy that the implementation of that process is coming at a time like this. And I'm very sure that African Development Bank will want to do something that is sustainable, something that is measurable, and that is community-based. So that intervention is coming right now, but I'm sure that the state will take ownership and be serious about this intervention. We do know we have a lot of intervention over the years, as the federal government is giving, external they are given. Do you understand? We have support from the development agencies funding, even to our commercial banks. Only commercial bank, but unfortunately, our commercial banks, they are not friends of farmers. I'm sorry to say, So I'm sorry to say they are not friends of farmers. So most of those funds, all lending funds coming from developmental banks, I don't know what they do with those funds. Because farmers do not get the support. They don't get, I don't know if they do, but I don't think that support is enough.
All right, Mrs. Kuburat. All right, I want to ask you one more question before we go on a quick break. Now, looking at, we heard about opening of the reserves of the 6th geopolitical zone when it comes to food. If it gets to that, according to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who spoke and said that the food reserve will be open in the 6 geopolitical zones if it gets to if the food crisis worsens. I hope you're aware. Hello?
Well,
coming to that, I want you to, in your own opinion or in your own understanding, what measures do you think has been put in place to address this distribution challenge and ensure that food reaches most vulnerable populations affected by the crisis if it gets to that point? Because we have to know that how food is going to be distributed among individuals. And we have a bad data system in Nigeria. We do not, when when it comes to census, we're not even sure of the populace in Nigeria as a nation. So how do you think, in your own opinion, what are the challenges and that will ensure that food reaches the most vulnerable population affected by this crisis, if it ever gets worsened in that aspect?
When it comes to food distribution, I honestly, I don't know, because the federal government, there's this controversy that the federal government gave some bag of rice to some representative from different states. As of today, there's some states that they got, some states that they didn't get. Do you understand? So yes. I think it has come to now. I don't know, maybe the federal government will also need to have a serious task force that will ensure that this food they are distributing gets to the right people. Do you understand? Because I feel that if the reserve is there, are they going to give the reserve free, or they are going to sell at a discounted price? I will still tell you, this still goes back to the governor of the state. Each governor will receive their reserve from their zone. Let them have a dedicated center where people will go and take. And as they are giving people, let there be a data where they will write their name and their number, so that they will know that these things are not given to invisible people. Do you understand? So I think the distribution should be decentralized. It still goes back to the governors. There should be a town hall meeting where there should be a permanent stakeholders in every state, where these stakeholders will meet with the governor every quarter.
All right, Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande. Let's quickly go on a quick break, and you're going to join us shortly so we can continue with the part 2 of the program. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. And if you're just tuning in, this is Inside Today. Let's go on a quick break. Inside Today, we'll be back. You're welcome back, and if you're just tuning in, this is Inside Today, and our focus is the federal government initiative on the rotten food crisis in Nigeria. We now understand that the federal government has been collaborating with international organizations, development partners, and state governments to pool resources, knowledge, and expertise. The collaborative approach aimed to amplify the impact of initiative and ensure the coordinated response to food crisis. While these initiatives represent a step in the right direction, the federal government continues to alleviate and adapt its strategies to address emerging challenges and effectively tackle the food crisis in Nigeria. And like I said, I am being joined by Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande. Thank you for joining me on the part 2 of the program. Are you with me, Mrs. Temitope?
I'm with you, madam. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, like I mentioned before. Now, looking at all of these initiatives you've mentioned, challenges and all when it comes to food and being a farmer and, of course, in the agricultural sector. Now, how is the federal government monitoring the evaluation, the effectiveness of its initiatives and policies related to the food crisis? And in your own opinion, what steps are being taken to improve and adapt these measures as necessary?
Well, I think we have the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, which is the arm of federal government that that works with Ministry of Agriculture across the state. So I think the Ministry of Agriculture should actually take their position, and they need to take their position and measure, put in place systems to measure performance of government interventions at the state levels, at the regional levels, and at the local government levels. So I think it's the responsibility of the Federal Ministry of Agri to ensure this is in place.
Okay. Okay. Now, looking at it, what do you think are the key priorities and objectives of the federal government in relation to the food crisis in Nigeria? And what progress has been made towards achieving these goals?
Well, if you look at food is the first basic necessity of life. And if you look at even the sustainable development goals, the first point there is zero hunger. So it's the front burner before any government. Food is very key to any. If there's no food, I mean, the farmers acronym is no food, no nation. Do you understand? So food
Yes.
is very, very pivotal. And that is the reason why the food also is the provision of food sustainability is also key to this government. So the government has done a lot to ensure that there's food sustainability. They've done a lot. And that's why they keep releasing funds for this purpose to the states. So I think I will go back again to say that the Ministry of Agriculture under their different departments, for different, we have different agro commodities, we also have livestock, we have other, they should work in tandem with the state agri ministry and other stakeholders to ensure that the intervention at the federal level is being used rightly and executed. So I think it's the work of the the Ministry of Agriculture in all the states. We have Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in all the states. So they need to work. They need to work together with the ministry, with the state at the state level to ensure compliance, to ensure sustainability, to ensure that the program is achieved the desired result. So that if there are issues, they can go back to board and review things and come back. So it's still the responsibility of the Agri Ministry to work with the State Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that federal government intervention achieve their results.
All right, Mr. Mutokwe, quickly now, the federal government, how have they promoted resilience and sustainable agricultural practices to mitigate the impact of future food crisis in Nigeria? As a farmer, being in the agricultural sector, in your own opinion, briefly now, how have they been able to mitigate the impact of future food crisis in Nigeria?
Well, one of the you can see that from since the beginning of this year, one of the major steps the federal government took is the dry season wheat farming in Jigawa State. Yes, is one of the key, which is very important. Like I said, you can't have a land that will not yield for you because there's no rain. And that was why they introduced that provision of irrigation systems across the country. I think that's commendable. They've started, yes. Ministry of Agriculture have deployed to Jigawa State to improve wheat production. And I'm sure that it will go to other regions. And what the African Development Bank, the intervention from African Development Bank presently to Nigeria, they've signed, I think they've started executing as well. That will also ensure sustainability and food security. So okay. I know that the present government are on a right pedestal, to ensure food sustainability and security. However, they cannot work in isolation. They have to work with the state owners, which are the governors, the Ministry of Agriculture in the state, the other stakeholders in the state, in that value chain. They need to work with them to ensure the success of federal government intervention.
Okay. Looking at it, being a farmer, like I always relate to that because I know that you are the founder and of course the president of She Farmers Initiative. Looking at it critically, are there any plans or strategies in place to enhance local food production, reduce dependence on imports, and promote self-sufficiency in Nigeria?
Well, as an association, presently, we're looking at engaging as many lands as possible. The only way we can improve production of commodities locally is by increasing production. And the only way we can increase production is by cultivating enough land area. Most of our women are challenged because they don't have access to tractors to clear lands. and to do all these works for them. So we're hoping that the federal government plan, we are also trying to strategically position ourselves to go from scattered cultivation. Now we're clustering together now. Before now, one woman will have 2 acres here, 1 acre there. No, it's not working anymore. So for us to enjoy commercial agriculture and enjoy the use of machine, we also need to engage a large expanse of land. Like we're talking about 500 acres, 300 acres. That's what we're working right now. So for each region, we have commodities that we have identified that comes out in commercial quantities in different areas of the state. So those commodities is what we're focusing on. So we're going to be commercializing the production of these commodities so that it will increase production, and it will also take the stress away from our women. Our women have stressed a lot. They can sit back and see machine work for them. For instance, if you look at rice production in area states where we have rice, most of this rice is still done manually, which is very unhealthy. You can imagine cultivating 1 acre of rice for like almost a week, when you can do that with a rice planter in just an hour. So, and we can only achieve that. You can't bring a rice planter into just 1 acre farm. But when you have women clustered together in a community, in a local government with 200 acres of rice land, they can use rice planter to cultivate. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at commercial production. Commercial production will increase food production and give us sustainability.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande. Thank you for being a part of Insight today. You have really enlightened us when it comes to issues regarding the food crisis in Nigeria as a nation. And thank you so much. And of course, Mrs. Kudirat Temitope Ande, she is the founder, president of She Farmers Initiative. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful.
Thank you. And with that, I will be wrapping it up on the program Insight Today. Hope you have been well informed when it comes to the food crisis and, of course, the effort the federal government is making to ensure the crisis doesn't loom beyond what it is at the moment. And, of course, being hopeful and knowing that the economy, by the grace of God, will be great again. I'm sure the federal government is putting a lot of work when it comes to directives of the court orders and the 6 geopolitical zones of the reserve that will be opened if any issues of food crisis occurs, which is ongoing at the moment in some states in Nigeria. Thank you all so much for being a part of Insight today. I am Jumai Manson. Have a good day.